You can draw this in Procreate. You can draw this super cute pumpkin kitty on your iPad in the app Procreate just by following the steps in this easy tutorial. During this video, you will learn all about using layers, how you can easily color your line art, and how to make use of things like alpha lock, clipping mask, and layer mask. Once you have finished this tutorial, I would love to see your results, so don't forget to share it. If you are sharing it on Instagram, then tag me in the image, not just in the description, because that way I will be able to find your work and then maybe we will see it in the next video. Just like these fantastic results from my friends at Patreon. Just in case you're not aware yet, Patreon is the place you need to go if you just can't get enough of these Procreate tutorials. Because there you'll find more than 150 tutorials that range from beginner levels to more advanced levels. So I'm sure that will keep you busy. But now of course we'll be working on this tutorial, for which we will be working on a canvas that is 3500 pixels by 3500 pixels. But if your iPad can't handle a lot, then you can definitely make your canvas a little bit smaller. Just make sure to also make your brushes a little bit smaller than mine then. So now if you are ready, let's get started. We'll start out by sketching the basic shapes of our illustration. And to do that, let's grab a sketching brush. I'll be using the 6B pencil, which you can find under sketching, and just grab a dark color like black or a very dark gray, doesn't really matter. I have the opacity of the brush at 100% and the size at 50%. And let's start out by creating a circular, or a bit like an oval shape for the head of our kitty. And then underneath there'll be that pumpkin. So that's also a rounded shape. And maybe we can make this one a little bit bigger. And then here we'll have the body of the cat. It's also a rounded shape attached to that pumpkin. And we'll have its paws, which will also be these little ovals. So we'll have an oval on the left and on the right. At the top of its head, it'll have these triangular shapes for the ears. So these are all very simple shapes, which I'm sure you can make. And then here we'll have its tail, which is a curved shape like this. And then for the eyes, first let's make a line through the center of its face so that we can place the eyes and keep an equal distance between the eyes. Let's make a circle over here and over here. And these big eyes will make our cat look very cute. Then here we'll have a little triangular shape for the nose and a tiny little mouth. On the side, we can make some rosy cheeks. So we'll have two ovals here. And here at the top of its head, I'd like to add some autumn leaves. It's a bit as if this cat is wearing a bow. It's like a decoration on its head. So it'll be something like this. Let's add a little shape to the ear, that fold. And then we can refine the pumpkin a little bit. It'll have this extra shape in the center, curve on this side and on this side. We'll make the outline here a little bit thicker. You can definitely use lighter strokes when you're sketching, but I'm using very thick ones just because it's easier to see on screen. But you can definitely keep your sketch strokes very light. Here I'd like to add some more leaves, some extra decoration. Just make these simple leafy shapes. Then over here we'll have another paw, barely visible, with an extra leaf. And here we'll have a curve for its arm. And the paw coming here with these nails, or like fingers, toes. What are they? also add some fluffies, some fur on the side, these pointy shapes, and on this side as well. And then for a face on our pumpkin, let's make these curved lines here for the eyes. It's a happy little pumpkin, but of course you can add whatever facial expression you like. You can just look up some examples of Halloween pumpkins and get some inspiration. Mine is very happy. This is a happy illustration. First I'll make a curved smile like this, and then you can add these teeth, making him look a little bit derpy. Then in the eyes, I'd also like to add these highlights, one here and here on the same side, and a smaller one here. So now we have a very rough sketch. I feel like the placement is a bit too far to the left, so we can just go to the Move and Transform tool, the little arrow here, and then we can move it a bit to the right, so it's nicely centered on our canvas, and then just tap the arrow again. What I usually like to do once I have a very rough sketch is create a more refined sketch on top. To do that, you can go to your rough sketch layer and then tap the N and then lower the opacity to, let's say, well, usually I go for around 30%, and then tap the plus for a new layer on top. And on this layer, you can make your more refined sketch. You can just follow your sketchy lines. And still, you don't have to create something super tidy, but it'll make it easier for you to create your line art later, because you will be able to decide where you want your lines to be. So just go along that rough sketch and try to make a more like a definitive line almost. And you can adjust things a little bit. I want this paw to be a little bit higher. I'm gonna make these fingers. And this little arm. And just go along all the elements of your sketch. And here for the leaves, for instance, you can make a more refined shape here with some pointy parts. Make it look more like leaves. And use that rough sketch as a guide. Then along this one. Just something like this. For this ear. And this is the moment when you can still easily make adjustments to the shapes. And it'll be harder once you have created your entire line art. Now for the eyes, you can definitely use the quick shape. So just draw a circle and then hold your pen in place and tap one finger on the screen. That'll help a little bit. And then that oval for the rosy cheeks. And then the body, trying to make a nice curve here towards that little toe. And then for the pumpkin, make a curve curved line here, follow that one. This will all help you with your line art. Of course, you can also just dive in after you have made your rough sketch. Dive in and create your line art, but that will leave a bit more guesswork if you have a lot of sketchy lines. So I usually create a more refined sketch before I create my line art. Here we can add some details to the leaf again. Here as well, some pointy parts. And then for the face. Then its little triangular nose, or whatever shape you have created, of course. And its teeth there. Now we can also add those highlight circles again. So we're getting a nice idea of what our cat will look like. Now for the line art phase, what I usually like to do is keep that rough sketch underneath. So you can lower the opacity just a little bit more, like this, for instance, 21%, and then I like to merge the sketch layers together. For me, somehow it feels better to also have those messy lines still in there, but of course you could also get rid of them. Now for the line art, let's lower the opacity of this layer. Let's again go down to 30% and then tap the plus for a new layer. Then for our brush, I'd like to go to the calligraphy brushes and use the script brush. And for the color, we'll use this first color in the first row. Now the opacity is at 100% and the size, I have that set to 17%. And with this brush, the harder you press, the thicker your line will become. Now, it might take a little bit of practice, don't worry, but before you start, do make sure to check your pressure curve, for instance. Let's go to the wrench, then to prefs, and then here you'll see pressure and smoothing. And this is what my pressure curve looks like. Now, if you're having issues with pressure, then you might try changing your pressure curve to look a bit like this. But also, let's go back. Also, you need to make sure that you have dynamic brush scaling turned on. Make sure that's always turned on during my tutorials, by the way, because otherwise your brush size won't match with mine. Because when you have dynamic brush scaling turned on, this stroke, while zoomed out, will have the same thickness as when I'm zoomed in. But once you turn that off, dynamic brush scaling, let's see what happens when I'm zoomed in. This is my stroke. And when I'm zoomed out, this is my stroke. So that's not good. We need to turn that back on. Dynamic brush scaling. So our brush size will remain the same all over. Let me remove this. And then let's get started creating our line art. Let's start here or wherever you like actually. And try to vary your pressure to create varied line thickness and varied line weight. Because the weight is the thickness of your lines and it'll add more interest to your line art. As you can see, I'm using undo. I do that all the time actually. So don't worry if you don't get the line you want right away. You can try as many times as you like. And over here, I'll start here and then move up. Use a little pressure at the end of the lines. Oops, let's redo that. And then let's go from here downward, then towards that toe. And this curve, I'm making that nice and thick, giving some extra weight to our pumpkin. Now with the line weight, I usually try to make some thicker lines where you would also see some shadow and where gravity is pulling. So I like adding thicker lines on the undersides of objects. And then I'll make the lines lighter as I move up. So let's just fast forward. Please take your time. Don't worry about how many undos you need, and work on your line art until you have something like this. Now you can see how I have made most of the undersides of the objects. Those lines, I made those a little bit thicker, gave them more weight, and also I gave the leaves very light lines, very thin lines, because leaves are less heavy than the pumpkin and the cat. So giving them these thinner lines will also make them feel lighter. I can see that I've also skipped the eyes, because when making these perfect circles, the script brush isn't the most handy brush. Let's switch to the monoline brush actually. It's also set to 100% opacity and the size is set to 30%. And these are very handy to create these perfect circles. So let's just follow our sketch. Hold your pen in place, tap one finger on the screen to make it snap to this perfectly round circle, and then drag in the color. Then let's do the same for the other one. Hold your pen in place, hold one finger on the screen to make it snap to this perfectly round circle. And of course you can also tap circle here at the top in case you need to move it around. That gives you a bit more control. Let's place it over here. Maybe a bit more to the left, because we want that same distance from that center line to the edge of the eye. And then let's drag in the color. So now we have created all the lines. I just didn't follow these, for instance, for the ears. I want those, well, I want this area just to be a difference in color. I don't want a line. And also for the rosy cheeks, that will just be color. It won't need an outline. Before we continue to the coloring, let's add those little highlights to the eyes. Let's do that on a new layer. So we'll go to the layer menu, then we'll tap the plus, and then let's switch to white. You can switch to white by double tapping here in this area, and then let's make another circle, but a smaller one. If you want your sketch to be visible on top of your lines, what you can do is drag this on top of the rest, then tap this layer and use invert. That way your lines will become light and you will be able to see it on top of your line art. Now let's go back to this new layer that we have created, and then let's draw a circle. Hold your pen in place, hold one finger on the screen, and then drag in the color. Now let's do the same over here. Draw a circle, hold your pen in place, tap one finger on the screen, and then let's go to circle here at the top to make sure that it's placed the same as that one. So I think about here, and then let's drag in the color. Then let's make a small one over here. Hold your pen in place, tap one finger on the screen, and then drag in the color. And then another one over here. I think the placement is about right. Now that we have all this, let's turn off our sketch layer and then create a new layer by tapping the plus and drag that underneath your line art layer. And now we are going to add all the flat colors, and to do that on a layer that is not the line art layer, what you can do is tap the line art layer and then turn on reference. Now you can use separate layers and fill them with color, and it'll stay inside of the lines because it's using that layer as a reference. All right, so let's start with a color. Let's start with this one, third color in the first row. It's our base cat color. So let's drop it on the face and on the ear. And let's also drop it on the tail. I want the body to be on a separate layer because I might want to add light touches or maybe dark touches to the underside of the face. And having that on the same layer will make it a bit harder. If this is on a separate layer, I can easily add light to the top of the paws without going over the face. So let's make a new layer. Let's tap the plus and then we'll drag in the color for the paws and for the body. Then let's make another layer. Let's tap the plus and that'll be the layer for our pumpkin. For the pumpkin, we'll grab this color over here, second color in the second row. Let's drag it in. And on the sides, you can also use continue filling, of course, and then you can simply tap in the areas you want to fill. And then let's make a separate layer for the leaves. Let's tap the plus, grab another orange, this first color in the second row, drag it in, use continue filling, and then tap in these areas to fill those as well. Then we just need a layer for the nose. Let's tap the plus. Let's grab this color over here, first color in the third row. Let's drag it into the nose. And let's also use this color for the rosy cheeks. But before we do that, let's turn off reference on this layer. We don't need that anymore. So tap it, turn off reference, and then go back to layer 8 here. And now let's create an oval. Hold your pen in place. Then use edit here at the top. So you can move it around a bit. It's okay if it touches the eye. Let's go for something like this. I don't really need the sketch as a reference anymore. We can just place this where we think it looks good. Then over here, hold your pen in place, use edit. So you can nicely balance it with the other one and make it approximately the same size. And then drag in the color. Now let's work on the shading of our cat. Let me just zoom out a little bit, place it over here. Then let's go to the layer with the head and the tail. We'll tap it and we'll turn on alpha lock. Now everything is locked here and we can only paint on these shapes, which is super handy. And to do our painting, we'll go to the airbrushing brushes and use the soft brush. We are going to create some soft gradients. We'll start with this color over here, which is the fourth color in the first row. And the opacity of this brush is at 70%. And let's set the size to 20%. And now let's go over the underside of the face, adding a little bit of a shadow very gently. And let's do the same over here for the lower area of the tail. Then we'll switch to a lighter color, the second color in the first row, and we'll use that at the top of the head. Also at the top of the ears, creating a nice gradient. Also here for our tail, just a little bit. And now let's do the same for the body. Here on layer 5, first tap it, turn on alpha lock. Then let's first start with that fourth color in the first row to add a little bit of a shadow over here. That pumpkin is casting a bit of a shadow. And then for the light color, second color in the first row, let's add that to the top of the paws. And you can see here why it's so handy that these areas are on different layers. Otherwise, we would be adding this light color to the underside of the face. Now let's go back to the body. So tap that layer, then tap the plus, and then set this layer to clipping mask. So tap it, turn on clipping mask, and it's a bit the same as alpha lock, but now we're working on a separate layer. But whatever we draw here, it'll only show up on the cat, on this face. Now for the brush, let's go back to the script brush under calligraphy over here. And for the color, let's go for this one over here. That's the third color in the third row. And we are going to create that inside of the ear. Let's start about here. Create a curved line up. And then color this area. You can color it by hand or drop in the color once you have a closed shape. Then over here, we'll do the same. So you can also drop in the color at this point. I do see I went over this line a little bit. What you can do is tap and hold the eraser to make it switch to the script brush. And then simply erase this. Tidy it up a little bit. Like that. I want to add some more color variation to these ears. So let's go to this layer, tap it, and then turn on alpha lock. So we can make adjustments on these ear shapes without going outside of these ear shapes. Now first, let's grab this color, fourth color in the third row. And let's color half of this area. So we're creating a bit of a shadow. Let's do the same over here, a bit of a curved line, color it in. And then we'll switch to this last color here, fifth color in the third row, and add an even darker shadow here and over here as well. Next, I'd like to add a little pattern to our kitty, and let's do that on a layer underneath this one. So first we'll tap layer 4, then we'll tap the plus, and then for the color we will use this one over here, the fifth color in the first row. And this is the part where you can really make your own cat unique. You can add whatever pattern you like. I'll add some shapes over here and just drag in the color. You can add some blobs. You can make your cat look however you want. Maybe add some spots. Just make sure that every time you want to fill in your area with color, that you make a closed shape. Let's also create a shape on its tail. Maybe some stripes. I think it would be nice to add these spots here on top of its eyes as if it has these eyebrows. And I want to go a little bit darker. I want to grab this color, sixth color in the first row, to add a darker line here on its tail. But perhaps you want to add more darker parts. Go ahead, create your own unique kitty cat. Then let's do the same for the body. Let's go to this layer, layer 5, tap the plus, set this layer to clipping mask. So whatever we draw here will only show up on the body. And then go back to the fifth color in the first row. And then again, create a nice little pattern. I'll add a little spot here. I think my cat looks nice like this. Now we will go back to these layers over here. Let's tap layer 10 here. Then we'll tap the plus. And for this layer, we will change the layer blending mode. That means tapping the N here and then scrolling up to multiply. And multiply makes everything darker. So multiply is great when you want to add shadows. And let's do that by using this color, fourth color in the first row. And we will use our script brush to add some shadow edges, like here underneath. The light is coming from above, so these areas get a little bit of shadow. Right underneath the face. And also here underneath that leaf. And for the tail, let's create a line over here, following the curve of the tail, adding a shadow there. Then we'll lower the opacity of this layer because I feel like this is too dark. So we'll go to the layer, tap the M, and then slide to 50%. Next, we'll do something similar for the highlights. So let's tap the plus for a new layer. And this time we'll change the layer blending mode to screen, which is great for highlights. Now for the color, we will switch to this one, second color in the first row. And now let's add some highlights. especially on the top where the light is hitting. So along the ear here, along its head. And over here. Maybe on top here, on these little fluffies. Over here. You can see how this adds some nice extra interest to your cat. Let's also add a little light over here. So if there's some reflected light from the bottom and on the tail, like this. Now we are going to follow these same steps for the body. So first let's go to the body layer, and then we need to be on top of the spots. Then tap the plus and set this layer to clipping mask as well. Then we'll tap the N and we'll start with multiply. So scroll up. Let's already set this to 50% so our shadows will be nice and subtle. And now for the color, let's go to this one again. Fourth color in the first row. And let's make a shadow over here underneath that paw. Underneath these toes. Over here as well. And here on the body, that pumpkin is causing some shadow. And here underneath its paw, something like this. Then for the highlight, we'll make a new layer again. So we'll tap the plus in the layer menu, set this layer to clipping mask, then tap the N, and we'll scroll down to screen. Then we need to switch the color back to the second color in the first row. And then let's add a little highlight here on its back and at the top of its paws. You can see how this makes our cat look way more interesting than just with the flat colors. Next, I want to add a little extra touch to the eyes of the cat. Let's go to layer 2, which is our line art layer. Then tap the plus. Make sure that you are underneath this eye highlights layer. And then on this layer, let's use this color over here, fourth color in the third row. And for our brush, let's grab the monoline brush because I want to make a perfect circle. So let's draw a circle like this. Hold your pen in place and one finger on the screen. Then go to circle here at the top. Make sure that this one is in the center. Then tap the brush and make another circle right here. Hold your pen in place, one finger on the screen, then go to circle here at the top and move this one to the center of the other circle. Then you can drag in the color, and then let's lower the opacity of this layer. Let's tap the N, slide to the left, and let's go for 50%. And then let's duplicate this layer to use it on this side as well. So let's slide to the left on this layer, then tap duplicate, then go to the move and transform tool, the little arrow, and place this one over here. Then let's go back to the layer menu and pinch these two together. And now what I want to do is fade the upper right area of this type of iris thing, because that will add to that effect of the light hitting here. And to fade that area a little bit, let's tap this layer and then add a mask. Now a layer mask is added to this layer, and on this layer we can paint with whatever brush we like. We are going to use the soft brush under airbrushing and make sure that it's set to black. If it's not set to black, then you can just double tap here to grab it. And then with our soft brush, we'll go over all that outside area to gently fade the upper right area. So do that until you have something like this. Now let's go ahead and add some more interest to the pumpkin and the leaves. Now while we are at this, we can actually merge these layers with the highlight and that color. And if you are happy with the body, with the colors there, then you can actually merge all those layers as well. But only once you're sure that you don't need to go back again, because you can't undo this. Now let's go to the pumpkin layer. Let's tap it, turn on alpha lock so we can add a nice little gradient on this layer as well. Let's grab the first color in the second row, and we still have the airbrush. So let's just go over this left area with our airbrush, creating a nice soft gradient here. And then we use the same trick. We will use our multiply and screen layer again. So let's tap the plus, then let's set this layer to clipping mask, then tap the N, scroll up to multiply, and let's already set this to 50% because otherwise our shadow will be too dark. For our brush, we will go back to the script brush under calligraphy. And we still need this darker orange, so we don't need to switch our color. Now let's go along the left area, make some nice curves, go underneath this paw, which is casting a bit of a shadow. And also on the underside over here. A little bit here, perhaps a little bit over here. And then let's move to the highlights. So let's tap the plus for a new layer, tap the new layer, set it to clipping mask, then tap the N and scroll down to screen. And for the color, let's grab that lighter orange, second color in the second row. And let's go along this area, for instance, along here, at this side. And let's also go along the edges of those carved facial features, and especially along the undersides and those left areas. And over here, sides of these teeth, something like this. That will nicely emphasize its face. Now let's move on to our leaves. Let's go to layer 7 here, tap it, turn on alpha lock. Then let's go back to the soft brush under airbrushing. And let's stick with this light orange and add a little bit to these leaves to create a nice gentle gradient. Now over here. And for the leaves, I just want to add a little bit of shadow. So let's tap the plus on this layer, then tap that layer, turn on clipping mask, tap the N, scroll up to multiply. For the brush, we will go back to the script brush under calligraphy. And for the color, we will use that first color in the second row again. And then let's add a little bit of shadow on the undersides. Over here as well. Here, this leaf is casting a shadow on the other one. And over here, the cat is casting a shadow. I think something like this looks good. Then just lower the opacity by tapping the M on the layer and set it to 50%. Then I just want to add some leaf veins here. Let's tap the plus for a new layer. Then for the color, we will switch to the third color in the second row. And let's go in here and with our script brush, but very little pressure, let's add these leafy veins. Now, if you're having trouble using little pressure, then of course you can just make your brush a little bit smaller. So something like this. Then for the other ones, just some very simple lines. And just rotate your canvas if you need to. Sometimes that makes it easier to create certain lines. Then this one. Now finally, I just want to add one extra touch to our background. Let's tap the plus for a new layer and then drag this all the way to the bottom. Of course, you can merge layers which you like the pumpkin layers or the layers for the leaves. This can save some layer space. Now on this new layer, which is at the bottom, let's use this color over here, second color in the third row. And let's create an oval underneath our cat. You can hold your pen in place to make it snap to the quick shape and use edit here at the top if you need to move it around a bit until you have something you like, and then you can drag in the color. Then I'd also like to add some extra shapes, just some random round shapes, maybe a little heart, just like these little bubbles. Just adding a little bit of random interest to our illustration. Finally, all we need is a little shadow underneath our cat. Let's tap the plus for a new layer and tab the N and set this to multiply. And now we can just go along the underside of our cat and of the leaves. And I actually like the darkness of this shadow, so we don't need to lower the opacity in this case. Just along the edges, along this leaf, and a little bit over here, and there we have it. You have made it till the end and created a cute little pumpkin kitty. Now go ahead and share it, or get ready to follow your next tutorial. I think you might like this one. I would like to thank you for watching, and I will see you next time for the next tutorial.